All right. Had this great theory of bringing up this news, but the silly thing auto-played. Let me hit. You probably saw just this last week that yet another executive order saying everybody should be organized. It's the exact same it's a modification of the last one. So I just thought I'd share that little tidbit. All of this, of course, in the sort of the topic of my discussion here is what we can do about NIST. How deep am I? Perfect. So what I was hoping to talk a little bit about today is the NIST framework and how it relates to all the other frameworks and sort of to your, if you will, day jobs, and the difference in responsibilities in the world of technical security between doing things and writing about things. There are a bunch of people, and maybe we're all part of them, that complain about how much of their budget is wasted filling out forms. I have been relegated to the job of form filler outer for our company, which I do on a fairly regular basis. And the punchline of my story is how to do that without wasting a lot of your day. So I'll get into those topics today. The biggest problem that I see working with our customers just on a day-by-day regular basis is the overwhelming desire to push paper and get past it and move on to the next thing. So you have a bunch of everything that leads from documentation to compliance to procedures and policies that are Word documents that are saved as PDF and put somewhere and hauled out every Christmas to serve the turkey on. And that's their only useful purpose in most large organizations. Oh, you know, I was going to preface all of this. If you'd be willing to tell me how many of you in the room work for government, regulatory, and enforcement organizations? Okay, one. Watch this guy. Giant companies? Yeah, all right. That's distressing. I'll give you a little bit of background on me and the reason I asked that. I am July 25th is my birthday. I'll be 69 years old. Don't trust anyone over 30, I think was the rule. So I've worked at a lot of places for a long time, and early in my career I moved into management, so for a long time I've known very little and gotten away with it. I'm now the CFO of a company that makes firewalls, routers, and switches. We have no three-dimensional product. We only make virtual firewalls, routers, and switches. Obviously, they're mostly using cloud computing. Our company, I was part of the AMQP movement, and that little rabbit logo there, we sold RabbitMQ to VMware. So obviously, we use RabbitMQ. And plug for both of my organizations. I'm a member of the Chicago InfraGuard. There's an Indianapolis InfraGuard. I happen to be the treasurer of Chicago. and also the Electronic Crimes Task Force. Our company, as I said, makes firewalls, routers, and switches. They can be described by the marketing department as many things, and our price list is very long. And if you look carefully, they're all firewall, routers, switches, and it's all the same software, as is the case for all companies that sell firewalls, routers, and switches, which are all the same thing. Further background, we work in the realm of virtualization and cloud computing. So when I say we do firewalls, routers, and switches, we work at level 3 and above, basically. We don't sell equipment to Amazon. We sell equipment to Amazon users, for example. So you knew that because you're here. And all of you, there's a bunch of slides here to remind management, as the previous speaker was just saying, to remind management that even companies like ours are getting ripped off. So I'll slip through all of those. There's the previous executive order. Everyone is saying, gee, we should all work together. No one's working together. That's one of the reasons why we have meetings all the time. We have meetings to talk about working together. All these pre-NIST frameworks for managing security still exist and are still used. So this is a overview that I picked of relatively recognizable frameworks, right? Do any of you feel the need to comply with HIPAA? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, right. And is that because you're in the medical business or because you have an HR department? So I was talking with someone last night. They have to do drug screening randomly twice a year, and the reason boiled down to the fact that it was part of their view of what HIPAA compliance meant. These were systems administrators, security guys, for their company, which had an HR department. They used Blue Cross. They didn't touch any medical records. Excessive. These are still sort of the Big Ten names in compliance requirements, frameworks, standards. So you can definitely get to the point where one day and particularly from my point of view, our products used by people who have to comply with all these. So then, as I said, I get dragged into the conversation about being able to answer the questions on the spreadsheet. So it's row 801, when did you stop beating your wife? Most of the questions that security groups have been forced to come up with in order to comply with a set of requirements that were written vaguely to cover a broad spectrum of organization and problems, then you sit there and say, well, in the vendor compliance realm, which is what's touching me most recently, I guess I better find out from them whether they do X, Y, and Z, right? And so you formulate a question based on an abstract thinking about security, and you send it to me, and I answer it, and then the follow-up questions, and then the follow-up phone calls. It's generally always the same answer, but every time you need to replay it. So one of the things that I've gotten used to, and our clients are getting better and better at, is figuring out how to consolidate answers. And the punchline again is that NIST helps you do that. Just to be a grumpy old man, I thought I'd list out not all, but a series of seemingly logical classes that you could take with an unidentified company, and how much it might cost to take all those classes. Of course, you'll be retired shortly before you get finished. Do you all have all these? Okay, good. Me too. Not. The last speaker that was up here was talking about the fact that, gee, we bought a lot of stuff. And it used to be software came in boxes. I don't know if you've ever. What happened was there was this stuff called software, and you'd put it on physical media, and then you'd put it in a box with a bunch of other things that other people paid you to put in the box. It's to work for Borland. And then the customer would take it and put it on a shelf because it usually was fairly attractive. And the more boxes you had, the more rank you had in the company. I don't know what you guys do these days. Well, there's a lot of cruft that doesn't have anything to do with doing your job. These are mostly all the list of things that we run into. And pretty much none of all the boxes that you've never installed, the certifications you have that you slept through the class but got an 80 on the test because you're really good at taking tests on security, don't protect your system. NIST had the unfortunate goal of trying to build a generic set of standards for security for everybody. These are the major 16 infrastructure sectors. So from a NIST point of view and from a FBI point of view, gee, all we need to do is protect all those things. There must be something that's missing. There's probably one other industry sector not listed. Gaming would come to mind. And so then, I don't know if you've seen this, but the NIST framework is broken into this logical sequence of responsibilities, tasks, process, right? Almost all of the frameworks have variations on this theme. And since NIST came out a couple of years ago, I have a picture here somewhere, and I tried the best I could. There's the Cloud Security Alliance put together a spreadsheet that, of course, takes their framework, which predates NIST by weeks, and maps it to all the other frameworks. So there'll be an item on framework A, your favorite, and then how its item number 3 relates to everybody else's. And you can't even get the spreadsheet to resolve out on a screen. So all of these frameworks end up being large documents. Over here in this far right-hand column is the other major security frameworks. So, right, these are acronyms of security frameworks in this column. These are sort of the major areas of NIST standard category in one of these sectors, right? So it's a framework. That is its big achievement. And mapping to other things, if you have figured out the answer to a particular problem in one of these, if you then reclassify it back up to NIST, the next time you get hit with something else, you know where to go to look to map things together. And of course, like a lot of the standards, frameworks, and consultants that you bring in to look at your security, there's different ways of categorizing how good a job you're doing generally, but on each one of the tasks, right? Oh, gee, we kind of do that. To this notion that you have an adaptive security framework. That is easy when you have a relatively small organization, and next to impossible when you have a large organization. So the debate between whether the winning organizational strategy is a isolated network strategy or a hierarchical strategy, the answer generally comes out to be that a hierarchical strategy, like a big company, is really good at executing orders. So if you have a nicely defined security strategy and a set of policies, a hierarchical organization can execute policy and strategy more effectively than a distributed networked organization. It can do that for good policies and bad policies. Exercising a bad, redundant, or ineffective strategy, or one that's worn out quickly, is not necessarily a winning strategy. A hierarchical organization, therefore, wears you down as the workers in that organization. The problem with being part of a networked organization, where you distribute responsibility and authority out into the organization, a flatter organization sometimes is what people talk about, is you don't make decisions very quickly, but generally you would reduce the risk of making bad decisions. So one of the goals that all the people who worked on NIST have, and one of the goals of any other organization, whether it's a profit-making organization or a not-for-profit organization that's in the business of paying people to either sell security compliance kits or do consulting or run classes, is to make their language the common language. We'd like it to be called Coke, not Pepsi. The notion of using the U.S. federal government to come up with a standard was maybe we can get everybody to just accept one common language because it'll be better for the practitioners. That is still a goal. As you saw, Palo Alto and Cisco intentionally name everything differently for a reason. They don't want you to know how to use the other company's product. You take my class, not theirs, and we'll just name that differently for you. So every time you run into one of these frameworks and the decision about how you're going to organize your compliance operations in a security department, well, this is redundant. Why am I doing HIPAA and PCI DS, right? It's a bunch of questions. They're all getting at the same subject, and they all ask different questions in different orders with different organizations, and I have to re-edit the paragraph or change the spreadsheet or change the database. I'm sure the idea of penalties for non-compliance isn't going to happen. Probably the most effective approach I've seen is, and the closest thing to an organization that has some teeth is the credit card companies, because they're a monopoly. Well, they're an oligopoly. And their standards actually have questions in them that border on being a technically answerable question. They come very close. And, for example, the only place where you can sit there and there's a definitive statement not just about you oughta, but what you ought to do. Gee, you ought to be real careful here, and maybe you should use network segmentation to segment out your credit card app from the rest of your organization's applications and servers, right? Most other places sit there and say things like, standards say things like, gee, segmentation would be cool. You should consider it. Or do you use it? Because if you use segmentation or you've thought about it or you're going to use it, well, that would make you a level 2, and level 2 is better than level 1. There's a huge debate going on right now on a sub tangent, tangent of this. Should a cryptographic application, when it boots up, when a router boots up that's supposed to be cryptography, should it test to see whether cryptography is turned on? That's now a bunch of emails and conferences and sessions and meetings. Well, it turns out if you make hardware, it's too late. I have an idea. Don't ship unacceptable cryptography in something that's supposed to be a government standard. Leave those algorithms off the choice list. Don't allow the big button that says turn off encryption. Gray it out. Okay, we're done. Weeks and weeks. Does anyone have, so far, I'm mindful of time, and I wanted to get to the point where I'm talking about things that you care about. Has anyone seen anything so far that they care about or want to talk about or have a question about? Because I was just trying to sort of get a level set going on where everyone is. So this is my favorite. Margaret, who works in our company and got this set up, said that this graphic shows what 91% is. For those of you who weren't sure. 91% of the companies say they already have a risk-based security framework. That's pretty incredible. It's not true on so many levels. It's just surprising. But it does show how also, if you asked me, my answer would be yes, we do. And then if you said, well, can I see it? Sure, come on over. But it's hardly a formalized, printable 400-page document that I can drop on the table, right? It's spread all over a bunch of policy documents that start from welcome to cohesive networks and go from there through all kinds of policies and procedures and things you have to sign every so often, tests you have to take. Where is it? One of the interesting problems, there's a utility company that started using field devices to locate where their stuff was underground in the northeast part of the United States. They probably should be secure, and then they discovered, well, since you could use a hack of that to find the right place to put a bomb, where nobody else is looking, right? Where do a lot of things cross close to underground where I could open up a manhole, throw something in, let it count down for 3 days while I change countries. Nobody will go in there. Nobody saw me. It's out in the woods. So I thought maybe they should lock that step down. When it was on paper, it was kind of locked up. And guys in trucks had pieces of paper. Guys in trucks with fancy iPads, not so much. So we started isolating out the trucks and then segmenting the available data on the database. And our company didn't do it, but I got dragged in with them to help on the strategy and policy and answering the question step. But look, what I was getting to is all of this boils down to some pretty easy steps. If you look at this, and this is a sequence that starts with you don't have a set of policies and procedures that you can document and share with regulators or customers or the board of directors security committee that just got formed yesterday or what have you, or just the chief information officer of the company needs to be able to sign a document saying he knows where all of the software is. If you're in the financial industry, I used to run security for, I worked for Swiss Bank. Swiss Bank bought UBS, and I left during the merger. But when you don't have policies and procedures that are shareable, even if you have policies and procedures that are effective, you need to begin at the top. But I guess the other point is, all right, you're 5 years into this. You've got a security operation. You have policies and procedures. They're relatively documented. They're reasonably effective. You've got the document that says, here are the things that still need to get done. On a regular basis, you've got to loop back through all of this. And pretty much a zero-based budget approach to documenting security. And this comes back to the debate that everyone has. How many people is it going to take to do that in a global company? And what should the budget be for paper pushing about technical security? It's incredible. And it generally means there's going to be a couple of lawyers working in the technical security department. We have our attorney sits next to me. I can whack her in the shoulder. And of course, I also sit close enough to our customer support desk that I can hear any conversations by our Chicago customer support team. And I actually read all the support tickets as they go by until I get confused, and then I go to the next one. So I don't try to solve any, but I do try to understand. If you think about, we're a cloud-based network. The lights went out. I didn't know what to do. We're a cloud-based firewall router switch company. We have about 150, 200-ish companies that we go to market through, and about 2,400 people that can ask questions of our support desk as a so level 1 people, and our guys are logically level 2 and above. I don't know all of them by name. Zendesk doesn't push their domain name or their company name when it pushes their name across on a ticket, which is incredibly insane. But I've come to know the people who ask questions and the more complicated ones that relate to where our industry is going. Micro segmentation. So we don't have a clear set of policies for, you can sit there and say, well, gee, you ought to compartmentalize your network. If you compartmentalize your network down to applications, you can. So microsegmentation is this notion of then saying the layers of an application ought to be segmented. So you think about the standard 3-4 layer application with a UI and web front end, some application servers, a database server, and some messaging servers on it. Some degree of spiking in the land of Amazon to throw more things onto the servers when they're actually being used, more things onto the web servers during usage, etc. Don't let web servers talk to database servers, problem solved. Don't let database servers talk to anything but a messaging server. Oh, but the DBAs, they have to get in. Okay. How many DBAs should there be in a global corporation? 3 is plenty. There is no such thing as an SQL call to a database that isn't run by 3 people. If you need something and you're a developer, ask for it, and we'll write you a nice object interface. And you can have what you ask for. But I'm not going to give developers permission to databases. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. All right, so the 3 guys, by the time we got to be UBS, were probably 11 or 12. They now probably have several hundred, and the rule's probably been broken. So I think so I know we're in Indianapolis, and this has nothing to do with the city of Chicago. This is a play on the Chicago School of Architecture. You need to start thinking about ways to effectively design policy. I know you guys are mostly technology people, but this is the painful part of your job. You're part of the security organization. How do you run a security organization to be effective from a compliance and policy management point of view? And I think most of the ways that major corporations have done things in the past have been stack a lot of bricks up. And I guess what I'm saying is take another look at the way you do things. Asking a bunch of people who early in their careers went into technology to write Word documents and use lots of features and tabs and buttons and colors to make it easier for the board to understand is punishment. So then the other thing, you can spend money, but even in a very large organization, there's also just have somebody sit down, some group of people sit down and roll your own compliance documents, right? I work with a company that in Chicago that pretty much all they do is get paid consulting projects to go in and write, reorganize, and do find and replace of their standard compliance manual. Which one did you need? Oh, let me write that for you. It's a project, but the structure's out there. So if you're encountering this stuff for the first time, or what you have isn't working, one of the answers is get a group of people together who want to write code in English and assign them this project, right? It just takes forever, and it becomes a job. But there's nothing in here that you can't glean by going through the NIST standard. All right, perfect. Sort of page by page and saying, shit, I need a list of all of our servers. Somebody must be able to confirm that I've finally gotten it right. Is there anything else that has power going into it? Anywhere. Right? A list of all of your workstations, a list of all of the bring your own devices, that's bordering on the let's just declare defeat. You can buy software that allegedly discovers everything that was plugged in at the moment that you bought the software. I was ahead of myself. You can go out and easily find these self-help things. So that's another piece to all of this. If you do the right Google search, you're going to find, oh, look, here's a fill-in-the-blank compliance manual. Oh, look, here's a fill-in-the-blank XML spreadsheet that asks questions, and then they're intended to be the self-discovery first phase where do you have when was the last time you stopped beating your wife? But as soon as you get to question 427B, you sit there and say, oh, shoot, we're going to have to deal with that. And you sit there and say, all right, that's a chapter in the manual. I'm going to... So I have a bunch of case studies in here with only a few minutes left. Why don't I stop talking for a minute? I was just looking at the pretty pictures here and seeing if there's anything you care about. Not really. Where are the pain points that anyone's seen lately on trying to be in compliance as compared to running security? Did any of you touch on any of this? You're just being polite and taking a quick nap. Where are you? Yep. Right. This is a huge pain, and I think one of the reasons why it makes sense to realize how much time is being spent on demonstrating compliance and having auditors walk through and answering questions and realizing that, okay, now I need to figure out how to streamline answering that question. This is a huge irritant, and particularly from my point of view, when you look at what people are then doing in order to create the appearance of compliance as compared to solving the problem that the compliance requirement was intended to address. This is one of the rule injection into routers. If you write lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of rules, you must be doing something. And the justification for writing lots of rules is, well, we need to show evidence that we worry about that. Right? Guess what? You still have to get all those rules into the machines that read through them. Rule injection becomes a problem in a virtualized computing environment because virtual computers come up, go down, move, apps move, things move from dev to test to prod. The firewalls should be applied in development and move along. They don't get applied. How many minutes? 5? All right, there's 5 more minutes. I got 10 now. There, somebody says 11.
I'm applying for a job in an organization. How much should I need to know about
Yeah. I think one of the interesting, and since you're applying to a company, you can do a little bit of looking ahead of time to see what they're into, right? So, a couple examples. The HIPAA stuff really is designed to protect people, the healthcare industry, right? The fact that a tractor manufacturing company's administrators have to pass HIPAA compliance tests is odd, right? And screwbally, yeah, well. The other one that I think is a perfect example, there were 2 guys last Wednesday at some conference in Chicago where I met 2 guys from a casino company, and they have all these rules on the casino companies because casinos used to be run by the mafia. So if you're the state of Illinois, you pass all kinds of administrative rules to protect yourself from a problem that you've already decided you're going to deal with. So they had all these extra requirements that made no sense, right? They needed to protect the gaming machines and the data and the money, but they had all these other, we have to comply with all these other things. The credit card PCI compliance, our customers can pay for a VNS3 device on Amazon with PayPal. They can pay by credit card. They can pay by ACH. They can send me a wire. We occasionally get a check. They're these paper things come in the mail. We do not have to comply with any PCI requirements because we don't take credit cards. You can pay us with a credit card on PayPal or through our bank or through QuickBooks, but I don't take the credit card. Right? So I guess my answer is once you drill down into what business they're in, and of course how big they are, because the bigger they are, the more complicated, right? You can begin to figure out where those questions are going to come from. Do they have a chief information security officer on their website or on LinkedIn? Right? If you look up the company name and chief information security officer, or the acronym, now you know something. Even if you're not going to work for him, it tells you what the job of an admin and network of security admin is going to be in that company. It's going to have a lot of overhead of administrative process. That didn't answer the question, but it danced around it. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you were here, but the last speaker was on a totally different, I mean, he was obviously on a related subject, but one of his points was that he began to use a regular communication about security up through his command chain to senior management. And, of course, the first time he used a regular communication as compared to responding to questions, the bottom section where he was saying, and if we were going to do this right, it'd cost this much more money, got some pushback. But the just sitting there and waiting to respond to a question, then you are using hyperbole to try to get a point across, and you've got drawings with pictures of circles on them. The regular communication so that the next guy up the food chain isn't blindsided when he gets asked a question, I think is the way to keep the, if you will, the chatter down and get back to what the real problem is. The Harris Bank is part of Bank of Montreal. Bank of Montreal's Chief Information Security Officer has both a red hat and a white hat pen testing team on his staff full time. So, but they're a very conservative bank in a very regulated industry. That's a huge organization to drag around. But he has highly polished board-level presentations about what he does and what his budget is and how it comes down. And he's proactively talking up and out to his board and to regulators rather than waiting to respond. Because I think it's the wait, gee, I don't have time, I'm trying to do security, is going to get you to places that are very uncomfortable. All right, I'm being dragged off the stage. So sorry for taking up all of your time with me talking. We did eventually get to some questions. I'll be around during lunch and this afternoon if you have questions. And I'm the only Dwight Coop on the internet. There is one other, I think he's a professor at some university somewhere. So obviously my grandfather's last name was corrupted when he came to Ellis Island down to Coop, because there's no such thing. Cohesive networks, so dwight.coop@cohesive.net, and we're relatively easier to find by just typing in Dwight Coop. Thank you.